This is Ivy Unleashed, a Gold Ivy production. Welcome back to Ivy Unleashed, everyone. We are so excited for today's episode because a big focus of mine right now in my healing journey is regulating my nervous system. After being sick with my gut and everything, I've learned how important our nervous system is and how trauma and just life can dysregulate it. So we have on the incredible Dr. Kate Jones, chiropractor, healing facilitator. Dr. Kate, welcome to Ivy Unleashed.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here in this conversation with y'all and just ready to dive in.
Yeah, and being a healing facilitator, I can't even imagine what you've experienced, what you've seen, the growth you've experienced yourself and with other people. So can you just talk about kind of like what you do, what that looks like kind of on a weekly basis for you?
The best way to dive into all that is if I share like a little bit of how I got there.
Yes.
So my whole background is in dance. I grew up dancing. I did my undergraduate in dance, and I was always just fascinated with, the body and how it moved. And I mean, I spent a vast majority of my life watching movement, understanding it, digesting it into my own body, and then reproducing it, right? So there's this very inherent wisdom that I have that connects me to movement, right? Stepping into healing facilitation and chiropractic was never a part of my plan. Like I said, I was a dancer, did my undergraduate in dance, danced professionally in companies after I graduated. And then I met my husband who was doing prerequisites for chiropractic college. We started dating. And then I moved up to the Bay Area from Los Angeles because we were like, we can't keep doing this long distance thing. We're missing out on everything. And I started working for the chiropractic college. And then from there, I would go with him to everything. So I would go to all the seminars. I was on campus. So I would go to like Friday seminar. I'd like pop in randomly to classes. We would go to weekend workshops and things. And I kind of just got really immersed in all of it because I was working in enrollment. So I had to understand it from a different viewpoint too. And I also knew, this is going to be a part of our lives. And this is going to be kind of the foundations and principles that we live our lives in, like in alignment with, natural healing and being aware of the innate wisdom of the body. So from there, I was like, this is awesome. And I want to do it too. So I decided to then go to chiropractic college, and his last quarter was my first quarter. So I joke with him that he got to go twice. From there, it was, going through chiropractic college and learning the body from a much different vantage point. So I had known it from movement and from expression and from emotion and from, performance and all these other ways of, athleticism, and then learning the intricacies of the science of how it all works and the neurology and, all of the different systems of the body gave me another layer of love and appreciation for how this whole thing works. And so from there, I just became fascinated. I've always been fascinated with, why do people do the things that they do? Like, how do we get to these places? And that's one of the big questions that we ask in chiropractic is why? And I think that that's one of the biggest questions that we can ask with healing too, is why is this showing up? Not just what is showing up, how do I mitigate a symptom, but why am I here and what led me to that place will give us the direction of how we can actually step into our healing, not just the management of something.
I love that. Mm-hmm. For me, right, it's these symptoms are signals, and that's what I learned. And I worked with a chiropractor, I worked with an acupuncturist, I did the whole natural realm to a therapist, and really learned about the mind-body connection. And at Ivy Unleashed, that's what we're all about, is connecting the mind, body, and trauma was a big part of that. So I would love to hear your take on trauma, how that affects our body, gives us these symptoms that are coming from our mind and our experience, I should say.
And trauma is like a big buzzword right now. And everybody's talking about trauma, and it's great. I think that it's necessary for us to be diving deeper into the healing experience. And I recently dove in and did like a certification program in integrative somatic trauma therapy, which was really beautiful to sort of deepen my understanding of it. To simplify it, is it's when we feel like there's an experience that has not been able to be integrated. One of my favorite quotes in one of the speakers who was a facilitator in the program I did was from Dr. Ruby Gibson. She's this amazing Lakota woman. And she said, trauma happens when we lose our voice, our choice, or our power. And healing happens when we reclaim our voice, choice, and power. And you can look at that from, you know, a mental standpoint, a physical standpoint, an emotional standpoint, a spiritual standpoint, an energetic standpoint. You know, when we feel like we've lost our sovereignty or our autonomy, it can be traumatic to us. And so no matter how big or small the event, the body's recognition of the stimulus that comes in, and if we have the ability to integrate it, will allow us to have the healing. But if we don't integrate it, then we're storing it for later. So we are sensory beings, right? We're always interacting with everything around us, whether we're conscious of it or not conscious of it, right? We're breathing air, we're hearing the sounds around us, we're having conversation with other people, we're feeling the energy of the spaces that we're in, we're moving our bodies, we're nourishing our bodies with different things. And again, information comes into the body. And this is how I kind of explain it from a chiropractic standpoint is information will come into the body, right? The body has an opportunity to say, whoa, I know what to do with this. Great. Fantastic. Let's integrate this experience. Let's figure out how we need to move through it and then keep it moving. If the body doesn't have the bandwidth within the nervous system to be able to integrate an experience, it's going to say, oh shit, I don't know what to do with this. Let me hold on to it until I have the proper resources and ability to say, now I know how to take care of this, right? So this can be as simple as something like, okay, a car accident, right? That's a common thing that people think of when they think of chiropractic. They think headaches, neck pain, back pain, car accidents. Most people will come in initially for that. We see people with a lot of different things. So come in for all different kinds of things if you're open to seeing that. I feel like the universe will present to you what you're ready for and what you're ready to be in facilitation to. So we get a lot of people who will come in who have like past emotional trauma or abuse or sexual trauma or grief or really complex things that need to be healed that they haven't been able to get answers for. But if we break it down from a simple standpoint of like, say it's a physical thing that's been going on, say somebody got in a car accident, right? They boom, get rear-ended. There's that whiplash effect that happens and the body goes, whoa, I don't know what to deal with this right now. That was a lot of stimulus and I don't know how to regulate that. I need somebody to help me with it. So there's going to be a physical element to it as well. So again, there's the musculoskeletal physical part of the healing, but then we also have to address like, okay, how is that person's nervous system responding now to driving? Or how is that person's nervous system responding to, you know, that fight or flight mechanism being turned on? So I think with trauma, it allows us to ask better questions to get better answers. And a lot of people are walking around saying, I don't know why this is happening to me. I feel like these certain things keep coming up. And the patterns of the trauma will continue to present itself until you have the capacity to deal with it.
I love the way you just explained that. It's got me thinking of 50,000 different things though. Like I'm thinking of people like as I'm getting older, for example, I'm noticing just more anxiety than I've had before. And I'm like, what is this? Like, what is happening? Like, where is this coming from? And I think sometimes it takes like a physical, like something to happen that you've got to like go get your neck adjusted or whatever. But it's like, where is that tension starting? Or like, you know, I love how you're talking about how it's presenting itself. And so what I'm curious about is in your work as a chiropractor, how people are coming to you for a physical thing. And then you have this like superpower as a healing facilitator. Like, how do you get people that aren't quite ready to talk about emotions, feelings, trauma, to address those things so they can actually heal everything?
Yeah, I think it's a process. And that's why the way that we care for people in our offices isn't just you come in when something hurts, you get adjusted and you leave. We really, really drive home the importance of care. and the importance of like, this is a relationship. Like I'm co-facilitating this experience with you. We're doing a dance together, and your willingness to show up to this and my willingness to show up to this, and for us to be in that partnership of healing together allows us to go deeper. So when it comes to taking people from like, I came in because I get headaches, to I have repressed childhood trauma that is not allowing me to relax in my body. It's a process, right? It takes development of trust and understanding, and being able to continuously hold space for people wherever they're at in their healing process, to say like, okay, like they come in, they start getting adjusted. Okay, the headaches, they're gone. So now we don't have that one main thing that's taking our attention, right? And this can be like, oh, I have eczema, or I have a skin issue, or I have headaches, or I have low back pain, or I have, digestive issues, or I have anxiety, or I have, cycles of depression, whatever it is. It's like, once that's not speaking as loud as it was previously, then we can start to ask questions about the things that are like underneath it, right? And again, over time, we can kind of tap in, and the body speaks to us. The body holds all of the information. It's never lying to us. And it has, this ability to recount all of our emotions and our feelings. It's stored in our cellular being. It's stored in the waters of our body. It's stored in the memories of our fascia. It's stored in, the energetic grid of our system. And so when you can learn to tap into those things, like some of those things will pop up. And as a facilitator, it's my job to know when to present that information, or when to appropriately ask the question about it, because they might not be ready for it, right?
What are some of those questions that you ask people, right? Like I come in for digestive issues and back pain, and then something comes up and oh, maybe there is some trauma underlining there. Well, how do you even bring that up?
It depends on the person too. It depends on the person. It depends on the setting. It depends on the relationship that you have with that client at that time. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, like, if I'm feeling things in the system, I'm feeling things in the body, I'll be like, I'll ask the simple question of like, how's your digestion doing? Okay. Like what's coming up for you? Or like, for me now, it's like things will drop in, and I'll know, like, ask this question about certain things. Cause again, it'll show up very loud. And again, we all have these extra sensory perceptive abilities, but most of us haven't trained them. Right. So when there's been the focus of deep listening, the information will come to the surface. So for somebody, if there's something that's going on, and it's like, say I have like a hand on a low back, and I'm just like feeling there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of fear, emotions are palpable, right? And especially with women, like for us, like as we work within our womb spaces too, like if I'm feeling something, or sometimes I'll ask like, where are you in your cycle? Like, how has your cycle been for you? What have your emotions been like around your cycle? Do you feel like there's anything that you're carrying from your past that hasn't yet been released? And it's kind of asking those questions that allow for enough openness that they'll share to the level that they're ready to share. And then I'll be like, what I'm feeling is. And again, we have these different ways of reading the body as well. Like our left side is our feminine side. Our right side is our masculine side. So for instance, I've had women who come in, and, one of my clients, I was working with her, and we were like doing some womb stuff. And she had, everything was like left side, left side, left side, left side coming in. And I was adjusting her, and I just kept hearing like sister, 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 sister. And I was like, all right, like, what, like, what is this? And so I just asked her, I was working with her, and I said, like, how's your relationship to the feminine? Like, do you have a sister? Are you close with her? Are you not close with her? And she was like, I've actually been having a really hard time connecting with her. And I was like, okay. I was like, so let's like move some of that, because we hold it, right? We hold it if we're not able to express it, or we're not able to move through it, or we're not able to deal with it, or we haven't acknowledged the trauma, or it feels like there's something that's unresolved. We'll hold it somewhere. So again, from a chiropractic standpoint, it's like there is this musculoskeletal element to it, but there's also this deep listening and tenderness that needs to be afforded to the ways that we care for people. And then as those questions arise, allowing there, again, like I said before, to be appropriate timing and setting and like kind of guiding people into allowing them to step into their vulnerability and their bravery.
Oh, there are so many questions I have. I'm going to just keep saying that because I'm just thinking of so many things. Well, the first thing I keep thinking about is just that resistance of like letting your body even be the vessel for information, right? It's like you said, it's muscles, it's bones. Like I think up here, and that's where the information is. And so, the body keeps the score. I think, the information that you were just saying is in our bodies. It's kind of a foreign concept to some people, especially if you're just kind of entering into like thinking for the first time about maybe getting a therapist or thinking for the first time about quieting the noise and listening to your intuition, right? And so what would you say to those people that are kind of just getting started to listening to their body? Like, how can you kind of ease your way into understanding your body has a lot of information for you?
There's a graciousness that you need to allow for yourself to feel like, because I know that especially if people are looking at like the health and wellness space, the spirituality space, the self-development space, it can sometimes feel so far out there. Like, is this even attainable to me? Is that like these people are so much farther along the path? Like, where the fuck do I start? What should I do? Like, this seems like a lot. And I think that the more that you can just have patience and grace with yourself as you step into that space, that's step one. Step two is go back to basics and simplicity, right? So finding the things that bring you back home to your body. I'm a big fan of doing an inventory of self and like just sort of checking in, right? There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. There's a lot of different ways that you can quiet the mind and that you can come back to presence and focus within yourself. But I think that one of the ways that really helps me is throughout the day, I'm always taking an inventory. Like, how do I feel? What are my needs in this moment? Do I have a need for nourishment? Do I have a need for recuperation? Do I have a need for connection? Do I have a need for communicate, whatever it is, right? Am I meeting those basic needs? And a good resource for that is you can look into Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. There's like, you can literally go onto the website. There's a list of needs and a list of emotions, right? And so you can look at our emotions are basically downstream effects or symptoms of needs that are either being met or not being met. You can meditate all you want. You can do all the yoga in the fucking world. You can do all the plant medicine ceremonies. You can do all the things. But if you don't actually know what your needs are and how to get your needs met, then you're not creating a sustainable structure for you moving forward within your growth anyway. So step one is having grace for yourself. Step two is starting to build some resources. So getting an understanding of how to do an inventory with yourself, how to check in, like, okay, my hips do feel a little bit tight today. Okay, well, why do they feel a little bit tight? Well, I did a 5-hour drive the other day. But being able to check in with yourself. So I think that sometimes meditation can be hard initially for people to step into that space of quieting the mind. I mean, perfect example for Brett. He created a program called Move, Breathe, Meditate. It's a great way to like, you move your body first, then you breathe, then you lay down and things are quiet, right? So it's the same thing you see in yoga. You exhaust the body to a certain part of, physicality, and then you're able to utilize the breath to move through the body. And then you lay there and you soak it all in and you just let it fall away too. So I think if you're just getting started, it's going back to those simple basics of asking yourself, how am I today? What do I feel today? Where do I feel that in my body? And then how can I get that need met? From a health standpoint too, like if that's the new space that people are stepping into as well, we're complex plants. Like you need water, you need sunlight, you need soil, and you need air. So get outside, take your shoes off, get in the ground, drink good, clean, filtered, structured water, be able to move through your body in a way that feels nourishing to your body. Make sure you're nourishing your body with the right kinds of food. So like throw out all the processed shit. So I think that when you're just starting, it's how can I go back to basics and have grace for myself and patience as I start to unwind some of the old habits and behaviors that I have.
I love it. And all I'm hearing is slowing down to give yourself what you need. If you slow down enough to listen, for me, it was, okay, find the next doctor, do this, read the book, find the resource. It was so do, that the minute I slowed down, I actually gave my body the rest. I was like, oh, duh. Like, why am I overcomplicating all of these things? This idea of feeling good. It was like finding the perfect pill, the perfect solution, when really it was in me. I just had to give it the love that it needed. And I'm curious for you, when you think about a dysregulated nervous system, you say the state that you're in determines the story that your brain makes up. And so what does that mean? Because I have my ideas of what that means, but I want to hear it from you.
Well, I also want to just riff quickly on what you said about the slowing down. So healing is a feminine process. And the feminine requires us to soften, and it requires us to slow down and listen. So you can't supplement your way out of a lifestyle that you got yourself into, right? And the more that we continue to reach outside of ourselves and try to get into our hyper masculine, fix it, you're just continuing to pump the adrenals and pump the cortisol and like creating a stress environment for healing, when healing really means to sit back and listen and receive and be in the feminine way of what are the cycles of necessity that I have in my life, and how can I allow them to come forward from within me? Like you said, it's all inside of you.
And it was such a story of, I do more. You're not doing enough. Therefore, you're hurting because you are slowing down. And so once that mindset shift happened, it was freedom. And that's what leads me to that question is like, how do we switch that story?
It's a lot of deconditioning, right? It's a lot of deconditioning of how our society has placed how we live our lives onto us rather than through us. And so it is kind of this coming back to the nature way of listening and the feminine way of listening and the healing way of listening. And that's why you see a lot more like women, coming forward and saying like, I don't want to keep doing things the way that we've been doing them. And women leading in different arenas in different ways and saying there's another way that we can do this. And I think that the way that we change the story around all of that is exactly like what you brought up too when I said, the state that you're in determines the story that your brain makes up. And if we're constantly in fight or flight all the time because we're stressed, we're overwhelmed, we're exhausted, we're overworked, we're looking for the next fucking thing that we have to do, we're never listening and we're never regulating and we're never sitting within the bandwidth of our tolerance of how we can actually integrate the experiences in our lives. So if you're in a high stress environment all the time, you're constantly in fight or flight, the way that you view the world, the perspective that you take on, the ways that you engage with other people, the ways that you engage with your food, with your conversation, with everything is totally different than if you're chilled out and you're more relaxed. Right? I think that the easiest kind of, not to say that everybody needs to live in like vacation flow all the time, right? But imagine if your nervous system was in vacation flow more often. You're able to chill out and like listen and be present. So there is a slowing down again. And also the feminine doesn't necessarily mean that we don't, look at any mom, we get shit done. We just do it in a different rhythm. And so when I talk about the story that your brain makes up, right? It's like, if you look at it from a polyvagal standpoint, which again, the vagus nerve helps us regulate our nervous system, helps us, it travels from the brain into the gut, like it goes everywhere, right? And the way that we are able to understand our bandwidth, right? Like I'm good and I'm operating within this good bandwidth. If something pushes me too far out of my bandwidth, I'm going to be most likely in fight or flight, which majority of people are living in all the time. And healing doesn't happen there. And good decisions usually don't happen there. And so the more that we can regulate our nervous systems and come back into that good way with the bandwidth of like, okay, there's some challenges that are coming in, but I'm still in a regulated state where I'm resourced. I can figure out what I need to do. I can get my needs met within here. I can have good communication, and keep moving. The story that our brain is telling ourselves is one of I'm capable rather than I'm fucking overwhelmed. So again, if we're living in a resourced, regulated state, you're less likely to have reactive responses to things and you're more able to respond to things. So the story will be there.
And you talk about like, just because I'm saying it needs to be resourced or regulated does not mean it's always calm. So I'd love for you, because like some people just aren't calm people, right? But I would love for you to kind of talk through that of like regulation, resourced, and calm nervous system, kind of the difference between and what you mean with those things and what that could look like.
I think that there's also this misperception in, again, like health and wellness and spirituality and self-growth, that it's like you have to be Zen all the time. And that's just not the way that the nervous system is built. And that's also just not the way that we're built as humans. One of the most beautiful things that we have to offer in this third dimensional reality, in this experience of being human, is the fact that we get to experience emotion. The fact that we get to experience the spectrum of emotion, the fact that we get to experience the dualities of emotion. And so you're meant to feel your feelings, and you can feel your feelings in a regulated state, right? So you can feel like, ooh, that kind of, that came up for me. And like, I'm feeling I feel a little angry about that. Let me be with anger. I can be with anger, but not let anger completely just like decompartmentalize me and have like all the pieces breaking apart. And then I'm just disintegrating into this like anger monster. Or I'm sad. Let me be with sadness. Let me understand what sadness feels like. Let me understand what are the resources that I need to experience sadness and also to move through sadness without having to push it to the side. So when we feel our emotions in a resourced space, it allows us, and within that bandwidth, right, where we're not dysregulated, we're not totally popping off into our trauma brain, we're not, shunting down into our lower brain centers and like going into fight or flight, or like dissociating and dysregulating ourselves. When we're able to feel our emotions in a regulated state, it allows for us to, again, provide those resources for being with them. I think that there's, again, this misconception that, a lot of people observe their emotions, but they don't feel them. They witness them, but they don't feel them. And if you don't feel it, then you don't understand the vibration and the tone of it. So you don't know how to move through it. Because it's almost like, okay, I'm trying to find something that I can pick up. It's like, okay, like here's my joy. Oh, look at, hey, Joy, see you over there. Or like, oh, here's my grief. I'm witnessing it. I see it. I know all the things and all the stuff to do to like see it and understand it and whatever, but I'm not actually ever feeling it and being with it. So when you're with it and you move through it, that provides you with the opportunity to still be regulated, not necessarily zen and calm through the entire thing, but resourced in the experience of it. And you're accessing more of your humanness by actually feeling your feelings, which leads you to healing whatever needs to be healed.
Can you give an example of what that really, as best as you can, feels like? Because I've heard, right, you have to feel to heal, and that awareness piece of being aware of it and everything you're saying. I'm like, yes, but no one's ever taught us how to feel the feels. I've heard like it takes 90 seconds for a feeling to move through you, but like really giving us what it's like to feel sad and let it move through us. What is that like? Or whatever emotion comes to mind.
Again, it comes down to questions. It comes down to inventory for me. I'm a big feeler. I know that I was like put on this planet to like help people understand their emotions, to figure out how to create good boundaries, to help lead them back to like their most powerful selves and like help them heal. Right. And I get that because it's like, I feel everything. So for me, it's just this very innate thing. So when I think about how, like, helping people into feeling their feelings, it comes down to what is the somatic or the body experience that you're having with the feeling. So one, the need comes up, and we'll kind of walk through a process. So like, say there's a need for communication that's not being met, right? Say there's a friend that you haven't had an important conversation with, and you need to be able to have the conversation with them. So my need for communication is not being met. I'm feeling disconnected, or maybe kind of pushed to the side, or unacknowledged. And to me, that feels like sort of dismissive, right? Or whatever it may be. So it's identifying the need, identifying the emotion. And then the next part of this is not just like, because that keeps us in our head, that keeps us in the mental realm, right? I know what the need is. I know what the emotion is. I'm identifying what it is. I'm observing it. I'm witnessing it. I've done all the things to kind of like categorize it and make it make sense in my like rational thinking brain. The next part of it is, I think, the most important piece, where we say, where does this live in my body? Because if we can somatically locate where it lives, we can feel what it feels like. So for me, like, worry feels like a deep pit in my stomach. Like, oh. Anxiousness, I feel as a higher vibration. Here it kind of comes off my body, right? Sadness has like a sinking, collapsed feeling. It feels more hollow. I feel it like deeper behind my sternum. Joy feels really light and airy. So when we can start to identify the qualities of what the feeling feels like and where it lives within our body and where it wants to move, then I think that gives us a better access point of how we can actually feel it, right? So when something comes up for me, like anxiousness feels different than anger, then feels different than excitement. But I've sat with like, like this is coming up, like I feel kind of anxious about this. This is activating me in this way. I know that this, and this needs to get done, and my need for efficiency is not being met, and I'm feeling a little anxious, and that's feeling like it's right here. It's like, okay, well, let me be with anxiousness. I know what anxiousness feels like in my body. I know where it's living within my body. And now let me go to my resources of like, how do I move through this? For me, I'm like, I need to go outside and I need breath. So I've built the map. And when we can build our maps of what is the need, what is the emotion, where does this live in my body, and what do I need to be present with in order to nurture my experience of experiencing this feeling so that I can move through it, then we create a higher level of somatic emotional intelligence.
You're such a great teacher. I keep thinking of too how sometimes it might go the opposite way. Like I've had this happen to me where I've had clients that have been like, I stretched and I did like a hip opener and I started bawling. Or like the other day was on a run and I started crying. And so sometimes it's like, it shocks you because your body's like, I need to release this. Mm-hmm. So how does that happen? And how can we weave like, or be there for ourselves when our body kind of surprises us with this information?
I always tell people too, Dr. Danielle Cornelius, she is a great friend. She's a chiropractor. She focuses on women's health and pelvic and holistic pelvic floor work. And she always says, tears are welcome here. And I've like adopted that. I'm like, I'm going to say that all the time. But I always tell people, I'm like, crying is welcome. Like it's your way of your body processing and like anointing yourself with whatever needs to come out. And sometimes that surprise can be like, oh shit, I don't really have time to deal with this in this moment. So giving yourself enough space to be able to be confronted with something if it comes up. But that can be a really common thing. So when we're adjusting people too, it's like we can adjust somebody and something lets go and it's like sobbing on the table. And so there needs to be proper integration for whatever's coming up. So carving out the time for you to be like, okay, I'm feeling this, like the tears are coming. Don't fight them. Just let them come. Let them come, let them flow, let them go. because that's you metabolizing and moving the energetic emotion through your body and allowing for the release to happen. The hips thing, not surprised. We store so much information in our hips and in our psoas, and in our hip flexors too. And so when a lot of that starts to open and starts to release, like tears.
It's just so wild to think about, right? That like for me, it was gut health issues, and I stored so much pain and trauma within my stomach, it felt like. And as you're saying, your psoas, and then I think about women and the tension in our shoulders. Like, will you just speak to how and why that's a thing for the people who this is brand new to and are like, yeah, okay, my information trauma is stuck in my muscles. Okay.
Every emotion has a physical representation, right? So joy, shoulders are much more rolled back, chest is open, chin is lifted, head is held high, you're open and expressing, versus sadness or depression, usually the shoulders roll forward, the head drops down, the chest sinks back. Tension and overwhelm, we want to like protect our neck and protect our, ourselves, and we become more hyper vigilant. So we shrug the shoulders up, which again, any of these postures, the body is an intelligent system. It will do everything that it needs to do to keep you alive. And it will also make compensations according to whatever the hell you're dealing with. Right. So if you're super stressed and you're super overwhelmed, it's like, okay, well, maybe my traps are firing way more than like they need to be. And so I need to learn how to release that and how to open that. So not only is the information stored in our muscles and in our fascia, right, our memories and our experiences are stored in our body. And as we start to open those things up, we start to release them and let them go. But I think from a postural distortion too, it's like our body is, I'll dip into this a little bit too, but we are biotensegrity systems, right? So there are elements of us that are compressive and elements of us that are tensile or bring tension, right? And it all moves together in cohesive ability with one another. So it's like if there's one place that feels really compressed, there's going to be somewhere else that has a lot of tension. And so we need to address the totality of the system. And that goes as deep as into our fascia and into our organ structures as well. So when we start to unwind these things, one, of course, you're going to be, confronted with, okay, now I have new mobility here. And it feels different to be in my body in this position because I'm no longer sitting like a banana at a laptop. Like I'm open and my chest is wide and new muscles are firing. And so I'm experiencing what it feels like to be in this body position. And now that I'm experiencing what it feels like to be in this body position, I can let go of some of the tension that I've been holding in these other places or relax some of the places that have been compressed. And with that, again, we talked about how there will be emotions or feelings or different things that start to come up. So I mean, the invitation is just to invite it, right? To say, all right, as I continue to grow, heal, and evolve, I know I'm going to continue to meet new versions of myself, new evolved versions of myself, and unwind places of myself that I no longer need to carry.
Oh man, it's so great that you do what you're doing. I think of all those people going to chiropractics with not having a healing facilitator there. Like they're just walking around crying after their appointment. They don't know what to do with the emotion that just came out.
Yeah. And that's a big thing that we really focus on in our practices is like, that's how we train our chiropractors and our associates. So we have a company that, trains chiropractors and chiropractic students on the artistry and on how to adjust in this way. Because again, for me, my responsibility, I think in any healing facilitator's responsibility, whether it's breath work, whatever kind of ceremony, anything, whether you're doing Reiki or massage or chiropractic, or again, like plant medicine, whatever it is, if you're asking somebody to go deeper within themselves, or you're asking them to like uncover more of their healing journey, or you're having them, blast off with breath work, you have to help them land. That level of presence and that level of responsibility is something that we don't take lightly. Like I know that if I'm in a session working one-on-one with a client and we're going through something and they're having like a somatic experience and I'm coaching and we're going through stuff, it's like, I will be with you to make sure that you land from that experience. I'm not just going to leave you out there like raw and crying and like, bye, see you later. Like, have a good day. Great adjustment. Like, so glad your mid back is moving better, but we just like blasted open your posterior heart chakra and you're like, holy shit. Like, I never felt loved by my mom. Like, I can't just leave you there in that moment. So I think that that's something that I continuously, offer as not only a chiropractor and the ways that we train our facilitators and train our chiropractors and our associates is like, you have to be able to be present with people. And I think that that goes far beyond just whatever happens on the table, but it's also in our conversations, like as humans, human to human, how can we have these kinds of discussions where we can hold space for one another and we can powerfully ask people to come forward into the next version of themselves, but also say like, I've got you in that space. Like, I'm not just going to allow you to jump without a parachute.
I love that so much. It's something I wish I had. And to hear that that's what you're doing and you're also training people to do the same thing, I see hope in the way medicine is going. There's such a divide between Eastern and Western medicine. And I think the more I'm in this space, the more I'm seeing that it's shifting and it has me hopeful. One thing I keep thinking of is the topic of acute listening that you speak on. And I'd love to get into that, of why that is so important, what it is, and why it's a skill that everyone needs to develop.
Yeah, I think it comes back to a lot of what we've been talking about, is just that radical self-presence, right? So Andrea, like you were saying, you were like, I was on a run the other day and I just started crying. It's like, you could have just left it at that and been like, well, we'll just keep running and crying. But it's like that acute listening, that immediate understanding of like, whoa, there's something here for me. Let me pay attention to it. And it also goes back into, like we talked about as well, the slowing down, the allowing ourselves to be more in the feminine. And it doesn't always have to take an extensive amount of time, because again, time is a construct and we can shift it however we really want with like our presence. Like, we've all had those experiences where it's been like, oh my gosh, you get on the phone with a girlfriend that you haven't talked to in a long time. You're like, holy shit, we've been on the phone for 2 hours, versus you're having a conversation with somebody that you really don't want to like have a conversation with. And you're like, oh my God, this is the most excruciating 5 minutes of my life. Like, so I think when we can allow ourselves to have more presence within time, and to be aware of what's coming up for us, like in those little acute settings, right? Where it's like, boop, something came up, let's pay attention to it, right? And I think that the more that we're able to develop that skill, and it really comes down to presence within self, accountability within self, awareness of self, that you can say, ooh, that feels a little different. Because the more you know who you are and the more you know what your resting neutral vibration is, the more aware you'll become when like those little acute moments of like, this popped up, this doesn't feel like it's me, or this feels interesting and new, or there might be a lesson for me in this. Let's listen to it and allow whatever medicine or wisdom is coming through to allow it to come through.
And Dr. Kate, something that you talk about in one of your reels, I watched it like 6 times, and then I read your caption, and it was about acute listening, where it was like, you kind of pick up on other people's bullshit, or like you listen to your intuition and something feels off, and that you're very, like, you yourself are very good at noticing when you don't like someone's energy. And so can you talk about acute listening in that realm and how that plays into your relationships?
There's also something important within this too, is that there's a level of discernment, right? So I think sometimes people can become hyper vigilant as a stress response or as a trauma response. And so they're always looking, they're like on guard, and they're like, who's here to fuck something up?
That's me. That is me. Help me out, please.
There's a difference between that and having good discernment, right? So having good discernment is like, I'm not searching for people to fuck up. And I'm very aware of what that vibration of invasive energy feels like. it's more so listening for like, is this person in good way? Like, are their intentions pure? Is there something that feels like it's kind of on the subconscious? And like, we all have that inner listening ability, right? And so the main difference here is that when it's hyper vigilant and when it feels like a trauma response or a stress response, it feels different in your body. You feel very activated. You feel very on edge. Versus like, if it's coming from a place of discernment and you're listening and you're like, something feels off about that. I don't really know what it is. There's a different calm, resourced space that you're coming from in your body. So again, that's why everything always comes back to the body for me. It always comes back to like, how am I feeling in this moment? And especially as women, because like, we know that's one of our superpowers, is that we have this like intuitive ability that I feel like men can get to, and they can develop and they can train. And a lot of it is just innately available to us. It's how we protect the babies, right? They're meant to protect and provide and, do all of these different things in a different way, versus women. The way that we do that is like through this kind of calm, inherent listening, where we're like, okay, like a baby cries, like mom knows it's hungry, it's tired, it's, it's pooped, it's whatever. Like there is this different level of intuition that we have just kind of coded primally within us. And so the acute listening part comes down to the discernment versus the reactiveness. So if I'm feeling reactive in my body and I'm like, ooh, I don't know, this feels a little weird, like, like, is that me projecting my own shit onto a situation and hunting for something to be wrong? Or am I actually sitting back in my like divine feminine and listening and observing and then discerning appropriately with like a calm, resourced body? Because you'll feel a little ping that kind of comes up. You're like, ooh, that feels different. That feels weird. Let me pay attention. And then know how to act accordingly and how to set a boundary accordingly, or how to, from there.
That's so powerful. That speaks to me. Like hypervigilance is like the thing I'm working on right now, where it's like, you're safe. You are married to someone that really loves you. You're in a beautiful home. Your neighborhood's safe. It's not chaotic here. Like, you don't need to keep searching. It's like my brain's like searching for what's going to come get me next, or what, the next shoe to drop or whatever. So that's something I'm like, it like brings tears to my eyes, the way that you just explained that. So I'm going to use that exercise to be like, let's get in a more regulated space. Let's start out. So we're like, I liked how you even sat back in your chair, instead of being like, chest is up. Like, that's me,
on guard.
Yes.
And so it's finding the spaces like for you to sort of relax back into your feminine and be like, you know what? Like, I am safe. I am okay. It's the slowing down too. It's the changing the tone. It's changing the vibration. It's coming more into that divine observer and allowing, right? And I think that again, there's, and cutting out the shit that makes you feel anxious, setting the boundaries with the people or the places or the things or the engagement or the phone or the fucking TV or whatever it is that like, I know this revs me up. I need to not engage with that. Or it's setting like, expressing what your needs are and set it. Usually when we feel like hypervigilant or we feel kind of anxious about something, there's probably some boundaries that need to be set that we haven't communicated, whether it's an internal boundary for ourselves or whether it's like a boundary with somebody else. Or like a boundary with, sometimes it's like, oh, look at me. I'm like researching for reels. It's like, well, am I researching for reels, or am I just fucking dissociating and like scrolling shit into my subconscious because I'm bored?
That's such a good point.
The more that we can the more that you can become resonant with when your nervous system feels calm, do more of that.
I love that. Well, and you've said it a million times, and we say it all the time, but it's like, if you don't slow down and take that audit of your time and what you're putting into your body or what you're putting in your surroundings, if you don't slow down, you can't know. Like, I can't do something about this if I don't take that time. And it's like, can never hear it enough. or talk about it enough that it's like, and I felt that. And even when you were saying, you know, that vacation mode or whatever is like, I realize when I do go on vacation and I come back, I always say like, we've got too much going on. There's just too much going on. Right. And so it's like, how can we shift from the norm of maybe what everybody else is doing, but it's like, it's not working. It's not working to be this busy and all the things on the plate. I have 3 kids and maneuvering all the things. It's like, I'm going to have to keep shifting away from the norm in order to be in a more regulated space.
And I think that having, again, I always come back to this. It's like having the graciousness and the spaciousness for ourselves to say like, I know that I'm going to get into those spaces where I feel overwhelmed, where I feel stressed, where I feel like it's too much, where I feel like whatever. And then that's also my responsibility to say, how do I check in with exactly that? What is going on in our lives and what needs to be taken off the plate? Perfect example. We have 2 kids, 5 and 8. They're like getting like their own lives now because like they're in school and they like have their friends and they come home and they like tell me everything about everybody, which is hysterical. So they're grown up. They're not the mommy things that I'm dealing with now are not the same thing as like breastfeeding and waking up in the middle of the night and wiping ass. It's different. So with them growing up, it's like there needs to be more focus on like, okay, where are the interests for them lying? Like, how can we support their individual growth? Not just doing all the things that like, obviously we do as a family, but like really pouring into like, where are they curious? Where are they excited? And then with that too, it's like, we have multiple businesses and multiple employees, and my husband and I work together, and we just threw a gigantic event that we've done for 4 years in a row. And it was beautiful and we loved it. And Soul Revival was like this incredible event and so healing, so incredible. And I was the one who really spearheaded it, especially these last 2 years. I was feeling so much resistance in my body because it didn't feel like it was in the right reciprocity that was needed for this season of our lives. And so the questions that I always come back to when I'm looking at, you know, time management, family management, business management, life management, all of these different things that are going on is for what and for who? Why are we doing this? And then the more that you can understand for what and for who, the clarity and the focus of, like I always say, like, stay in your prayer. If it's not a part of your prayer, it shouldn't be a part of your life. And prayer can be like your intention or your focus, what you're trying to call in. With Soul Revival, it was something where I was like, this is beautiful. It serves people in a really good way. And I also feel like I need a moment to set it down, to get really clear on what is this? We as women are so capable of so many things, and we have bandwidth that is so vast in so many ways. And we also have a tendency to put ourselves at the bottom of the list and put all these other things higher up on the list and then wonder why we feel burnt out and we feel overwhelmed. I also had a client years ago where she was like, yeah, my intention for this year is like, I'm moving myself up the list. And I was like, I fucking love that. And so I think the more that we can identify, you know, where in our lives do we need to maybe slow down? What are the things that we need to put down? What are the things that are not necessarily necessities for us? Or is this in the right timing? Does this need a pause? That's okay. Has this like event or this project or, you know, this, you know, tradition thing that we do, has it come to like a sense of completion? And do we need to give it a pause so that we can recalibrate as a family or recalibrate as a couple or recalibrate as an individual or as a mother, whatever hat you're wearing, to say for what and for who? How am I showing up? And does this make sense? Because I think that's another thing that we just get conditioned into is just go, 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 keep going. You committed to this thing, like you're doing this event and you're doing this other thing and keep going and like scale and then add another thing and all the stuff that you're like, why the fuck am I doing this? Like, hold on a second, let's pause. And if you're in that place and you're like, no, this is great. Like, this is actually what I've been calling in. I need to build the team. Okay, great. Build the team so that we can stay like moving forward in a good way, but also have the spaciousness that is required for us to enjoy it and not feel stressed out about it. And sometimes that takes being like, I'm going to put this down for a second so that I can figure out what it actually is.
I love that. I think that's permission that we need to hear daily as women, as entrepreneurs. That was a question I was going to ask you is, how do you keep a regulated nervous system as you are a mom and an entrepreneur? And what I'm hearing you say is it's constantly checking in with yourself, being radically honest of what do I need, and knowing that just because it served me in the past doesn't mean it has to serve me this season of life. And that's okay.
I mean, that was one of the things too, was like after Soul Revival last year, so 2022, we moved to Tucson in 2021. It was like a big lift to launch a new practice in a new city where we knew absolutely nobody. We knew our realtor. And so there was a lot of lift and like getting into the community that needed to happen. And it was also like, it was a lot for us to move out here. And it was a big leap of faith and big trust to move. And then Soul Revival was happening. So I'm like throwing Soul Revival, trying to like lift, my own personal practice within it. We have multiple doctors, but also like getting into the community, like getting people to know, who I am and all these other things. And then momming and all the things that go along with like being the CEO of the home and kids and all of that stuff, that last year I was like, I'm going to take a beat from being in practice full time. And I was like, I'm taking a me-ternity. Like I need to figure some shit out and I need to focus on one, birthing this event and having myself do that in a way where it's not going to burn me out if I'm trying to do this event and also build a practice at the same time. I was like, I know that's going to crush my bandwidth and it's going to make me more irritable. It's going to make me feel, exhausted and tired. I'm going to feel taxed and overwhelmed. And that's going to not help me be a good mother or a good wife or a good friend. So like, I need to put something down for a moment and focus on other things. And that came with like a sacrifice, right? Of not being able to be in practice and doing a lot of what I was doing, for free. But I did it because I knew that that was a piece that needed to come forward and needed to be like a part of, like that prayer needed to come forward, that vision needed to come forward. And now that it's feeling like it's come to a sense of completion, I said, okay, now I also need to reset. I need to sit with, how do I want to re-step back into the practice? Who do I want to be in that space now? How do I want to be taking care of people now? What is Soul Revival? Is this a full-on festival? Is this another 300 person in-person event? Is this, a week-long retreat? What is it? And I think it's that consistent assessment and saying, I've felt myself be overwhelmed. I've felt myself have a lot on my plate. I've felt myself, feel into like, okay, if I'm going to continue with this, I need a team because I can't do the work of 6 people. So it's but having the graciousness and the spaciousness that we can return back to the self-inventory and say, again, I know I'm capable of doing many, many things, and for what and for who, and how can I do that in a good way that's honoring, me and also honoring all of my relations.
I feel like that's just, this is not in the episode, but what we needed to hear.
You like wrap every thought with a bow. It's like, I feel like if I say anything, I'm going to ruin the moment. Like, I know normally it's like, keep it going, transition. It's like, oh, that's got a bow on it.
No, I feel like I'm like, I need to embody what you're saying.
Yes.
Well, that's the medicine of all of it, right? Like that's, and when I say medicine, it's like the wisdom of it, right? Everything has a lesson and everything has, and whoever's listening to this podcast too, it's like, take what you want, leave what you want, feel what you need to feel, and carry forward what you want to carry forward. And that's great. And the other part of it too is like, knowledge without embodiment is just a bunch of knowledge. But once we actually embody it, that's when it becomes wisdom, and that's when it becomes medicine. And that's when we're able to say, like, I can share this in a way that feels profound and feels like people can actually hear it and feel it. And the more that you're able to feel into a concept and say like, ooh, like, when something hits and you're like, oh,
the last hour.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, I got this information, I'm feeling it, and I'm able to embody it, right? I'm not just spewing out the information that I learned. Like, we can all do that. We've all done that. Like, read the text, find the notes, say the things, yada, yada, yada. But it feels different when it's embodied and when you have actually lived the experiences and you can say, like, okay, like, I'm walking with this understanding rather than just trying to regurgitate the words that I've heard. And I think that's a big part of healing, and a big part of like where humanity is moving into is like, we're all needing to move back into a more embodied experience with good boundaries and with good listening and feeling our way through our lives rather than just doing our way through our lives.
Totally.
So beautifully said. And we can't do it without teachers like you. So thank you for doing the work you're doing. It is incredible. And I know everyone listening wants more of you. So where can they find you?
Primarily, you can find me on Instagram at Dr. Kate Jones. That's the best way to find me right now. I always joke, I work with people one-on-one, and I have been for the last like 2.5 years, like coaching. And people are like, why do you not have a website? A website or like whatever. I was like, it's kind of like Fight Club. Like, I don't know how, but like universe just will put people in proximity or in space, like when they're ready for that. So I do work with people one-on-one. I am going to be stepping back into some more in-person stuff. And that's a big part now. Again, like I said, that I put Soul Revival, like it's having its space right now, is to be a little bit more accessible with the offerings that I have. So I do teach, I do like online workshops and things. I'm going to be coaching in one of our programs called Healing Codes, which is a beautiful program all about the principles, the foundations, the elements of healing. And Brett, my husband, Dr. Brett Jones, he and I are going to be coaching weekly in that space as well. So it's group coaching. You get access to the entire program. You also get access to Move, Breathe, Meditate, which is a 3-month progressive program for movement, breathwork, meditation. We have a manifestation masterclass in there, but that's another way to continue to stay like connected to the community. And just, if you're wanting to dive more into understanding healing principles and those things, it's really accessible. The program is beautiful. I know because I platformed the entire thing. So it's pretty and organized. But yeah, so there's a few different ways to continue to connect, but direct access to me is probably best through Instagram because I actually do read my DMs.
Yeah. And I'm sure they know from this episode too, besides just being brilliant, you're hilarious. Your reels are super, like, they're funny and helpful at the same time, and they like really get you thinking. So it's like this triple threat of like, okay, I'm gonna laugh. But then it's like, wait, what's in the caption? Because you write in the caption like stuff that's actually life-changing too. It's wonderful.
A great follow is what she's saying.
Yes.
That's how I kind of am too when I'm at the source taking care of clients too at the Source Chiropractic. Is like my goal is like, I always have my doctor hat on and I can go really deep into the rabbit hole with people if they want to go there. But I think there's a certain like levity and joy that's needed within the healing process. And there's also a language of accessibility that has to be present for people to say like, oh, I can do this too. Mm-hmm. Right? No matter where they are on the path. So it's like, that's why I make funny, ratchet, ridiculous reels where I swear, because I want you to feel like, oh, I can get the point of this. And if I want to dive deeper, that's also available to me.
Yes, it's beautiful. And we were just going through some of the reels, like busting out loud. And the one that I saw that originally connected to you was the one where you're meditating, and it's like you're trying to meditate, and it's like the first 5 minutes of meditation, you have like rap songs going off in the back of your mind where you're trying to concentrate, but it's so hard. And I'm like, relatable. I feel the same way every time I try and meditate. So
totally. I'll like close my eyes and I'm like, why is Bad Bunny playing right now? Like,
I love it. Well, awesome. Well, how we always wrap up our show is first we do 3 gold stars. So your 3 takeaways for our listeners.
3 takeaways for you guys is to give yourself graciousness and spaciousness in your healing process. The second one is to learn how to take an accurate inventory of how you're feeling moment to moment. And the third one is to embody your emotions within the bandwidth of tolerance that you can, to know that you have resources available You're meant to feel your feelings. And the more that you're able to move through them, the richer your experience as a human will be.
So good. Oh, so good. Okay, next up is Unleashing Ivy, our rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Rapid fire. I love this. It's like a game.
It is. It really is. My question is about you right now in this season of life. What does regulating your nervous system look like? Some practices that you swear by, whether it's the meditation or something that people, inside look at really what you're doing day to day.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm definitely more fluid. I could be more regimented. So that's just me. But the biggest one for me for regulating my nervous system is one, getting away from this. Like putting my phone down and getting away from my phone. And then another one is getting outside. Like I know if I'm feeling like, like I need to go get into water or I need to go sweat in the sauna, like, and getting out into nature and getting off of my phone. That's like the primary thing for me is like putting the phone down.
And I have kids the same age as you. I have 10, 8, and 5. And so I'm curious about kind of just with all of the knowledge and wisdom you have, what are the like main practices that you are implementing with them in their little but very important lives right now?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is that we live it, right? So we live this way. So for them, it's everything in their day-to-day lives. So it's like teaching emotional intelligence where it's like the 5-year-old's having a meltdown. It's like, I see you're having really big feelings. Like, what are you feeling right now? What do you feel like you need in this moment? I see that you and your brother are not really communicating well. Like, Jackson, what are you feeling in this moment? Willow, what are you feeling in this moment? And allowing them to like have real time awareness of what's going on. So building those emotionally intelligent spaces for them. It's also as simple as like, you take your vitamins in the morning. We try to get them outside to do like move, breathe, meditate before school as much as we can. They fight us on it, but we still try, but getting them out into nature. And then for us too, it's like, for them, I'm like, who heals your body? And they're like, I do. And I'm like, good. So there's little things like, oh, you don't feel good. Like, what do you feel like you need in this moment? Do you think that, what are healthy foods for you? They're like vegetables and fruit. I'm like, okay, great. Like, what do you think you should be drinking right now? If you're thirsty, water. So it's like, we just, throughout the day, it's like, we live this way. So we just continue to educate them along the way so that they know that this is like the vibration that they can live in.
Love that. Ooh, the vibration. I love that. Everything you're saying, I just keep thinking energy, and I'm obsessed with your energy. It's so good. Okay. Last question. If you could go back and tell younger Kate one thing, what would you tell her?
I would probably tell her, learn how to have better boundaries sooner. And also like, calm down. Chill out. It's all good. You got this. But yeah, I think that for me, it was like, it's understanding the implementation of boundaries. And that's not just, it's boundaries physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, all of it. Right. So like advocating for myself and saying like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be messy and beautiful. You don't have to say yes to everybody just because you can get everything done. That person's not deserving of your time. That's not respectful. Say what you fucking mean, and you don't have to be a bitch when you say it. Mm-hmm. So I would say boundaries and like trust. Mm-hmm. Trust yourself, have faith in yourself, and set good boundaries because you are sacred.
Oh, so beautiful. I don't want to say goodbye. Like, no, it's over. Oh, it has been so everything you say, it's just like at this level in my body that's like, I needed to hear this message so much today. And I know every part of my being knows that the people that are tuning in need it too. It's so important, especially with the way that our world is going, how fast paced it is, to slow down. And I'm going to rewind this episode like once a week and be like, okay, what did Dr. Kate say about that? Okay, I'm going to embody it today. Do a little body scan. So thank you so much for the way, not only the knowledge that you have, but the way that you can express it. I think it makes it feel, like you said, so accessible, but then fun. And then like, I feel like I can do this.
It's
right?
empowering.
Yes. So thank you so much. And thank you for your time today.
And thank you for both of you for creating a space like this and for, you know, hosting a platform like this that allows people to have access to these types of resources. Like it's so, so important. And I see you and I value you and I honor you, and just like keep doing the good work and showing up for people, because it makes such a huge difference. So thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it.
Welcome.
Our pleasure. Okay, Kate, we leave our listeners with a piece of gold, a quote that speaks to you. Would you please share yours?
One of my favorite quotes, and I'm not exactly sure where this comes from, I'm blanking at the moment, but is a faith that can't be tested, can't be trusted. And I think that the more that we're able to develop our own faith in ourselves, our own faith in something that's bigger than us, but also to be aware of the fact that there will come tests in your life, whether again, it's mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, where you get to tap back into yourself, where you get to realign yourself with your boundaries, with your, you know, your experience as a human, to know that those tests will come, but to also have the faith that you can deepen in your own faith and build a higher level of trust for your ability to show up in those moments. So for me, it's like a faith that can't be tested, can't be trusted, is I know that I'm powerful enough and strong enough to be able to navigate my way through whatever comes in this life, and that I can find the skills and the resources and the inner strength and knowingness and grace to be able to move myself through whatever that may be.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold.